Okay, we're back in open session. Everybody's mic's back on. And remember, everybody, speak into the microphone. We get criticized for that. We're back in open session. We're ready for the first agenda action item. The first action item agenda is notice of claim for K-12 Management, Inc. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Mr. Como.
I move to approve the notice of disallowance of claim filed by Attorney Lefkowitz on the behalf of K-12 Management Incorporated.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, with that, this is a roll call vote.
Ms. Madden?
Aye.
Mr. Como?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is approval of facility analysis recommendations. I believe I'll turn this over to Ms. Clifton. Okay, that would be you. Have at it. You have the floor.
Here we go again. This is a continuation of where we were from our board workshop last week. The study has revealed various options for ways for the district to engage in projects that would save energy, improve safety, or help us in deferred maintenance. With me tonight, we have Rob Brown from Siemens, who can answer questions on the study, and we have Michelle Weiberg regarding any financing questions that we may have. What I have provided for you, let's see, so you have the big sheets, so you have hard copies to look at. We can also bring the listing with all of the projects up on the screen. And if there's items you would like to put in, take out, we can do that, and you can see the impact live as we do it.
Okay, before we start that, we did have a work session on Wednesday night of last week, so anyone who's watching knows that, where we went over a lot of this with the entire board in an open session, work session. We did receive a lot of information in our packets. Was there any questions any board members have about the information received in the packets that they want to bring up now before I turn it back to Lori? No questions on the information in the packets at this time. Okay. Back, Ms. Clifton.
So there had, out of the workshop, there came a question concerning, I'm going to point to number 10, the motors that might be involved in a VFD implementation, and the request was to bump that up to 10 horsepower or more. So that information is now included. So you'll see that change the dollar amount. What Rob is putting up is so you can see where we started and where we've gone. So as the numbers are changing, I know that gets confusing, so thought it might be helpful if we could put in some of the original numbers so you know. Perfect. So for, like in this instance, under electrical system improvements, the original worksheet that we saw had a net cost of $957,858. Based on questions and comments that came out of the worksheet that has been, or came out of the workshop that has been revised now to be 10 horse motor or bigger, and so that brings that down to $486,882.
And weren't we going to narrow that even more, not just every 10 horsepower drive or motor? I thought Steve, weren't you trying to put some other parameters around
Yeah.
it? I forgot the technical terms.
Drives,
Excuse me, before we start, we don't want to turn this into a complete work session, but I noticed that Siemens has some comments about the questions you're asking.
Okay.
And maybe we should allow them to have the floor to help answer these questions. You can freely ask the questions, but I could see that he wanted to help answer the questions, so.
Sure, sorry, Kurt.
Take a seat.
So to Mr. Edlin's question last Wednesday, he asked, really, does it have to be every 10-horse motor and above? Shouldn't it be the motors that are appropriate for soft start as well as drives? And what this represents is approximately just under 80 motors versus all of the motors that are in the district that, that do in fact fit. So that number is representative of the request.
Mr. Evans?
That was actually a portion of my response. The other one was, do we really need a variable speed drive on every motor? And generally in a variable speed drive, to drive a motor at varying speeds is something that you do with a varying load that you're trying to control. And not all of our 10-horse motors have varying loads. They're constant volume. The motor comes up to full speed most of the time, and that's where it stays. So what I was referencing, and I see the note on there, with soft start means that instead of just like turning on a light switch and the light comes on all at once, it brings a motor on very slowly to get it up to full speed, and that saves wear and tear on the equipment and cuts down on our peak electrical rates that we, will eventually get charged at in order to keep that peak low, which when a motor starts up full speed, you get a tremendous spike in your metering. And what we're trying to do with a soft start is you bring it up very slowly and you don't have that big spike. You come up very slowly on a ramp over time.
Yes, sir.
And that saves quite a bit. So I'm not convinced that we need, variable speed drives on everything versus soft starts on everything that's a constant volume load versus varying loads.
Now, I will confirm, but based on the feedback that I got from my engineer, who was at that meeting Wednesday night, that he went through every motor. And when we visited last Wednesday, it was just the, if I remember correctly, just the 10-horse motors. And then we had the comment go back, and which he did. And that number, and I'll go back and confirm if it's not, I'll correct it, but that number is representative of the motors that in fact do have variable loads.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I mean, the difference between us, on the motors those size, the difference in capital cost between a soft start and a VFD is not significant, really. Is that correct?
Yeah, the soft start's built into the drive.
But if you were going to upgrade the starters to soft start, instead of upgrading to a VFD that includes the soft start,
Oh, certainly.
the delta on the CapEx is not significant on motors of that size, or is it?
Well, the bigger you get, of course, the greater the delta, but in a 10-horse in of itself, it's not terribly significant.
Not that I'm saying we should or shouldn't have.
No, but there's also a question of whether you would need to replace the motor too. With a variable speed drive, you definitely have to upgrade the motor. With a soft start, I do not believe you have to.
Well, there's a lot of questions on this, and I think our role is, when you have something that involves expenditures, we're gonna still be looking at each item to make sure it's what we want to do in the best fiduciary duty. We're not here just to spend taxpayers' money, so. Mr.
Yeah,
Como?
just carrying your comment out a little bit, maybe saying it a little bit differently. To me, I'm looking at a maximum number that we would approve, and that if we can implement these for less, through the bidding process, or just deciding to do less, that we still can go in that direction. But I would be looking at these as maximum numbers right now. Is that the way I should be interpreting this, Lori?
Correct. We would still do a bid process, so these are the best estimates based
Okay.
on the information that we
Okay.
have.
Fair enough, fair enough.
But I do think it's important to point out on this that unlike what we had at the work session, we have at least the two big ticket items where it shows that we reduced the cost from $957 to $486. Doesn't mean we can't find ways of reducing the cost more. Or on the lighting, where we started out at $4.6 million, and now we're down to less than $1 million project as far as what the recommendation is. So there has been adjustments that were significant from what was first presented to us to what you have in your packets. Mr. McCaffrey?
I was not at the work session. Simple payback, those numbers mean what, years?
Correct.
Okay. So we're talking a 46-year payback? On
was
the
the
old,
original.
and a 30-year payback on the new? 30 years.
Correct. What isn't shown there is,
Yep.
from a deferred maintenance standpoint, some of the items that we're addressing.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, but a 30-year payback would bankrupt most businesses. Especially if they're financing, especially if they're financing the
Yeah,
improvement.
one of the things that was discussed also, Mr. McCaffrey, last week is some of the items don't necessarily make sense to do them if you're just looking at the simple number of years for payback. There are some items that perhaps can help with the longevity of other components.
Right.
So on and so forth. And there's other things that, there would be some items that we would want to just do because we haven't had them done and it still makes sense. Now, each of those, what makes sense, needs to be talked about in each of those unique cases. But I agree with you from the perspective of, I think the majority of these items that we're looking at ought to have a pretty quick payback for the majority of them. But there are some exceptions to that, and we did talk about some of those exceptions.
No, yeah, no, I totally
last
understand
time.
what you're talking about, pneumatics and whatnot, where your payback is gonna be on human capital, which is not factored in?
Human capital is not factored in.
Is not factored in. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna have a hard time voting for anything more than 10-year payback on this. And I'll tell you why, because, I mean, you're a businessman, Joe, you would never do anything with a 46-year. I mean, you're gonna be,
It'd have to have a
I
really
mean,
good
there's
explanation as
136
to why.
years. I mean, 136 years? I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, there are things up here that have nothing to do with an energy payback.
Oh,
just
and
so-
I know,
so
I know.
keep in mind, there's
Yeah,
some
I'm
deferred
noticing
maintenance
a lot of
things
that.
up there, there's some safety security issues
Yep,
that
yep.
we wouldn't do because it's gonna pay for itself in an energy
Right.
way, but it's something that we wanna consider because of the safety or
Right,
security of our
no,
buildings.
and and I don't want to turn it into a work session like Kurt said, because I agree with him 100%. This is a committee meeting and not a work session, but I'm just, because I wasn't here, my concerns about anything more than a 10-year, yeah, I'm not gonna vote for anything more.
Well, I think it's fair for the public to see us have a discussion like this.
Yes.
Even though they maybe we don't have the channels on during the work session. It just goes to show that we're all trying to scrutinize this and put our arms around this. I know we have someone who wants to talk again, but before we go further, I think it's just we'll probably have a little discussion, a review of the statute. I think the paybacks are selling points when they're good, and when they're not good, they're not selling points. And what they did was when they had real long paybacks, where they calculated paybacks, they usually didn't show them because they were so high.
Right.
And we said at the work session, we want to see them anyway, even if they're really, really high. For instance, as Lori was saying, the health and safety improvements, there's no payback there. I mean, but it's within the statute that you can cover that through a revenue limit exemption. So these are all possible things that could be covered under revenue limit exemptions, but doesn't mean we're gonna do as much
Right.
or do them now. We can do them in future years. There's no strict timeline. Now I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. And so to go back in time a little bit, the reason why we're here today, the main purpose was deferred maintenance. There was a list that Mr. Norder was kind enough to assemble that totaled approximately $6.5 million in deferred maintenance. And the discussion, as I recall it, when the project development agreement was enacted, was that roughly 50% of the energy savings would be required to pay for the overall defined program. And so there are things in here, to the point of everybody here, sorry. It turned off. That some of these items simply don't have any savings to pay back. And I think when we go to the bottom, you'll see the overall bundled payback, if I remember correctly, is right around, I think it's 40 years, 35, 40 years, and we'll look at that in a minute. But that is inclusive of South High School secured entry, the budget that's there with no energy savings. It's also inclusive of the Informacast software that also has no payback. And the bundled overall solution then comes back at just under 40 years. And so this is your program. It can be, we can limit it to 10 years. We can do whatever you want. At the end, I just wanted to put that perspective on as far
Yeah.
as why we started.
No, I totally understand. Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're talking about and factor everything in. But the scenario total is a 34.2 year payback. And that factors in like the south secured entry renovation and whatnot, right?
Correct. Everything that is checked
Yeah,
is in, stuff that is not checked is not.
okay. Yeah, for me, it's about payback.
Okay. Anything else?
Added also under the area of lighting, the original information that was provided had a net cost of 4.6 million. That was the entire district upgrading the lighting, all classrooms and all sites. That has been pared back. Number 4 then is select lighting. We would start at our highest energy users, which would be Meadowbrook, Rose Glen, and White Rock. And then I specifically had asked for information on the pool lighting, just so we would have that as a standalone item, so you can see, I don't believe that was there before. So you can see what the cost would be if we wanted to upgrade that pool specifically. And then exterior lighting is all parking lots and outdoor areas. And that has a very short payback in consideration. That would be with LED lighting, at the exterior lighting.
Mr. Edlin?
I got to back us up a few steps here. Our 2013, 2014 goals for this year was a 1 to 5 year facility plan in process with Epstein, Uline? Yeah. Have we gotten anywhere on that?
We have not.
Okay. I consider this to be part of that, because that's what the statute is. The statute is a way of, being outside of revenue limits in order to do a lot of capital improvements, which is a lot of this. A lot of this is deferred maintenance, replacing equipment, upgrading equipment. So,
The direction that Epstein Ewing was given was more of a curricular perspective. So going into spaces and looking at them with a classroom perspective. What is best for education? It wasn't necessary to focus on components and the types of things we're seeing here. So in order to coordinate, because we had the study going on, we didn't want duplication of effort.
okay,
And so we've kind of put a hold on Epstein Ewing, though, like the Harvey Phillip building, we had asked them specifically because that's a concern.
Right,
That and we have not yet seen that information.
okay. Yeah, we all know about the Harvey Phillips one because of the need and the age of the building, and it may work out for us. But I was under the understanding that this 1 to 5 year facilities plan was to deal with this list of items that need to be taken care of that Glenn put together for us that totaled up $29 million.
And our goal was to have it broader than that, to actually see curricular spaces, are they appropriate for their usage
Okay,
as well?
but the list that Glenn put together for each school was strictly maintenance needs. Randall, provide lockers, install a door, replace a gym floor, exhaust fan, mechanical relief damper control, upgrade the Siemens building control system, AC in the remainder of the building, replace air compressor. I was hoping that the direction we would have gone this year was to, tackle this list of maintenance needs while the interest rates were so low. I see us adding on to this list with this, and outside of revenue limits. So now we've made the list even longer.
Well, there are a lot of things that we really think we need to do, but they never make that list because of the priorities. And that's why our deferred maintenance is behind. You know, if you can put it off and maybe make that renovation, we've done so many renovations to spaces, the Quest program, the Flight Academy, renovating West Library. There's a lot of curricular things going on, instructional areas, and those tend to take priority,
Yeah.
you know, when we weigh them. So
Okay,
there's things on this list that we never get to.
I agree. And then I have to admit, and I think I mentioned this at the workshop, everybody kind of picked up on Whittier being one of our higher energy usage buildings. And this was our list of energy conservation things that had been done up through 2009. And 2002 through 2009, Whittier's had roofing done, 2 new doors, all new windows, 5 new univents, classroom heaters, and the other ones were done in 2000 by me. Lighting, lamps and ballasts, plumbing, new hot water heater, more roofing, all the steam traps were gone through, lighting relamping, Siemens system update, and yet it's the highest per square footage building we have as an elementary school. So when we
I think
keep,
part of that has to do with, because there's a portable classroom there. That's got to
maybe,
cost
I don't know when,
more too.
we'd have to historically look when the, you know, this is through 2000 through 2009.
It's a school that every year we have summer school at too. So that's a driving factor. Normally, summer school is rotated amongst our elementary buildings, but past history for the past 3 or 4 years, Whittier has had a summer school, which will drive our costs up because we never get the chance to turn things off like we do at other schools or scale them back.
Has
And
Whittier been air conditioned?
There's a portion of it that's air conditioned. But to give you an example, the year that we had the 100-degree temperatures, because of the fact that it's not air conditioned, we put about 13 portable air conditioners in that building just so those kids had a learning environment that was somewhat conducive to learning. So it really drove the cost up of operating that building. And it's not just a few rooms that we use at Whittier. We use just about the whole building. So it's a building that's almost running for 11 months out of the year, and we get from July 24th to August 24th to try to maybe shut some things down. And that's, as I looked at that and thought about that after we talked on Wednesday, I would say that's probably the contributing factor of Whittier being one of our higher usages of electricity, gas, and things like that, because of the fact that every year we have a summer school there, and every year all but 1 or 2 of the rooms are being used through that whole period of time.
Okay. And what do we, with this program, we're not really going to put anything into Whittier at all?
No.
Nothing, okay.
So the water efficiency will
Yeah.
be done at that school. Exterior lighting is appropriate. The cleaning and servicing of the HVAC equipment, so the cleaning of the coils and what have you in that space, which is important not only from a air circulation standpoint, as you know.
But those
also-
units are less than, they're, 10 years old or a little bit older, or some are, are done between 2002 and 2009.
Certainly.
And that's what I have. I'm dealing right now with that number of $1 million in deferred maintenance. I struggle with that, because that tells me that we're not doing our job. Whether that's an administration problem for not staffing the people we need, or it's, we just don't have the right people we need to do the job. If we're gonna spend this kind of money, where are we gonna be in a few years from now? We're gonna be right back in the same boat. So I'm not willing to spend money like this to do things and just let them slide back into disrepair again. I'm gonna, task the administration with coming up with a plan on how are we gonna do this right? Because we can't keep coming back here every couple of years saying, we need to go back and clean up our units again, because this isn't the first time we've heard this. You know, this is an ongoing issue, over and over, and I've brought this up as a board member for 4 years. You know, so I'm not willing to spend the money to let it go back into disrepair again.
Well, and if I may, I think, working with Glenn and going through the district, and I think with what Glenn has, he's done a wonderful job.
He has.
He's got $1.25 million. And candidly, the $1 million that's up there, I mean, there's a choice, and that's obviously, the 1.25, I don't believe includes labor, his personnel. But that said, there are always choices to be made. And to your point, Steve, if we clean these units, well, then in 5 years, they'll have to be gone through again. But the fact of the matter is today, there are some that are so plugged, they're simply not circulating.
And why is that?
Because they're dirty. And they haven't
And
been
why
cleaned.
is that?
They haven't been cleaned. But, so then if you don't do it today, then when do you do it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I can ignore changing my oil filter on my car too, and
yeah.
eventually some point I'm gonna have some major engine damage, and then I'm gonna have to get my engine fixed, and if I don't change the oil again, I'll be right back into the same boat.
And that's where we're at, is we need to change that oil. There are some spaces that simply aren't getting any real air circulating. So we're talking about fresh air, CO2 levels raising in the classroom, impacting test scores. This will address that issue in all of the buildings that we're touching. And then that 5 years from now begs a question, so then with that 5-year plan, what's the district's plan to keep that up? Is it, hire some additional folks for Glenn so that on a year-by-year basis, some of the schools get touched versus all of them other than North, as I understand it, because of what happened recently. None of them have been touched. So this helps reset that clock and gives you the ability to plan, candidly.
It's really sad that we, spend all this money changing equipment out and then let it just go into disrepair. There's other things on here on the HVAC list that we talked about replacing the pneumatic systems, the hybrid systems with complete DDC. I don't agree with that. Only because when you start talking about replacing large valves, the cost of operating a motorized valve, just to purchase the valve, just to replace it, is exponentially more expensive than having a pneumatic valve in there. Hybrid systems are very cost effective when you have larger valves and motors, things like that you're trying to control. It's very, very inexpensive to marry the two systems together and make them work together. But I will say that there are schools that we really should have almost all DDC, direct digital control systems in there, because it's not the energy savings, and that is a big component of it, it's the manpower savings. Oh my goodness, if you've got a high school and you don't have, a full-blown system like that, you're gonna spend all your time, like Glenn said, trying to find pneumatic leaks. And it's not beyond the pneumatic leaks. Pneumatics needs to be calibrated quite a bit, unless it's being controlled by DDC. So it's very, that's where you start to lose your energy efficiency. When you've got systems that are not functioning properly because we don't have the people to go out there and calibrate them and don't do it and let them fall into disrepair, now you're starting to chip away at, any energy savings that you might add when you calibrated them new to begin with. It's recommissioning. When you bring a building up to snuff, you're making it work the way it was designed to work. But we've let things fall into disrepair according to this, and that's a problem. You don't buy new equipment and then let it fall into disrepair.
I think the biggest issues that you have with the schools that are pneumatically actuated today isn't so much the actual valves, especially the larger ones, to your point. It's the systems. They're extremely leaky. And so compressor run times, as you know, go through the roof. You burn through compressors, and who knows the oil that might be in the lines and those types of things. And so from an overall quality perspective, quality of system, I mean, there are some benefits, of course, to DDC, but at the end of the day, the system that you have, whether you keep it pneumatic or you choose to move forward with DDC, something needs to be done with the severe leakiness of the systems that you have in place. Just from a cost-effective standpoint, when we talk about that, out of pocket from the district, moving towards a DDC system is more cost-effective to implement than rerunning all the pneumatic lines. But if again, I'll do whatever the district wants. If the district chooses to continue with the pneumatic system, and you'd like us to go through and reline everything, it's gonna be more expensive.
Glenn, didn't we have a lot of these systems for upgrades on the DDC already on our list of things that needed to be done?
We did.
We did, okay. But now,
But if I may, to get to Lori's point, unfortunately, things crop up that those programs fall off of. And she mentioned a few this year. We did a lot of instructional renovation this year, just a ton of it. So, we need to do. So that stuff comes up here, and unfortunately, the things that I had on my 5-year, they fall. Just, you know, the nature of the way we go about business, you know, and, you know, the instructional stuff is very important.
so all the things that we know that we had to do that are on your list, and a lot of them was upgrade the DDC systems in the buildings. But it seems like now we're gonna overpay to do that, because we had a relationship with Siemens before, and whether Siemens would be the contractor that would get it or somebody else to do it, now we're paying a consultant to come in here and tell us to do that and to run the job, so there's gonna be an additional general contracting charge on top of that. Wouldn't that be true? I mean, these projects are gonna be overseen by you guys, so, or somebody, so we're paying you to tell us what we already know, and then there's a profit margin built into that, which,
And so, I mean, incrementally, just given the sheer scope of the program, I mean, the program up, as it's shown, and again, that's just what's shown there now, is about $12 million. And so when you look at the automation upgrades, case in point, the cost of that construction management piece is extremely small. I mean, it's a very small percentage of the overall program. And so, I mean, are you paying something there? Yes, but it's negligible compared to the scope that's here within the district.
Mr. Como?
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I think our audience is seeing some issues come to a head that we've been discussing for a number of years. We run lean and mean. Glenn's staff is pretty tight. We know we've needed to have more people for quite some time. We also have run a very tight budget. We make every dollar count in this district, and I'm proud of that. And I'm glad that we have an administration that values every taxpayer's dollar the way they should, and they're transparent about it. And we have deferred maintenance every year that should be done. And so what we're seeing right now is a number of these things coming to a head, being understaffed, deferring things that we should have taken care of from a maintenance perspective. We want to continue to create an environment that's safe for learning and conducive to learning. And it's a lot to come together in a very efficient manner. And we pride ourselves in being efficient with our dollars. So with that said, I do agree, Steve, with you that one of the things that this committee has asked for, and we continue to ask for, is a plan. We need to get to a point where we are not just taking this on year by year. Whatever priorities float to the top, and Glenn, you and your team do the best you can, as Mr. Brown had pointed out, with the dollars we have and the staff that we have. But we need to come up with a way to make sure that we cover things that haven't been covered, whether we expand our staff to take care of those things, whether we outsource for those services, or perhaps a combination. But what we're starting to see is this come to a head. Mr. McCaffrey, I agree 100% with you that there are some projects that make sense, and those are the ones that are, 10 years or less. I might bicker on maybe it's 12 years or less, but, 10, 12 years, somewhere, those projects that have a 136-year payback time are tough to swallow. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't do them, but we should thoroughly debate whether that makes sense for us at this time. And we have never looked at the statutes and the acts that allow us to fund some of these projects before. We've put our toe in the water, we've started to discuss it, and we took that next step to actually have a formal analysis done by Siemens. And we came back with this particular result. One of the things that I would be comfortable with is, I still think this is a valid way to go and fund some of the projects in our district. I believe that. I'm wondering if we should perhaps walk before we run, though. Seriously look at the list that's before us and narrow it down to an amount that we can at least try this out and see what this looks like for a year. During that time, we can analyze whether this is an appropriate way for us to fund, and also recommit to that plan that Mr. Edlin was talking on that really is a goal that we have. I think we missed that goal. We did miss that goal. And we need to meet that goal. But I do see opportunity here, and I do see some good ideas here that could, one, save us money in the long run, two, create some safer environments, and hopefully three, part of the savings is to really identify some of those things that have been deferred so long that we really do need to take care of them. I don't know if I have a number in mind right now that would be acceptable to me, but I do know that I am having trouble with some of these, even the secured entryway at South. I think we have to discuss that. That's new to us. We haven't really thought through that. We haven't debated that. That's a pretty big project. But that should be one of those projects that's part of more of our long-term plan, and that we should be debating those types of things over time. So I'm going to just kind of sit back and see what other thoughts my fellow committee members have. But I think that may be a compromise on some of these things that are just kind of coming to a head right now.
Quick question, Glenn, and maybe Todd can answer this as well. In our old bargaining contract, we used to have a set number of people that we had to keep on staff, and we changed that, I think, in one of our last contracts. But I think that was like 100 people or something was in that contract. Do you remember what that number was? 102.
Mainly custodial.
Yeah. Have we maintained those numbers more or less, even though now we've cut back on those numbers? Okay. And we felt at the time being constrained to 102 per the union contract was a problem, as I recall, and we wanted to get that. Roughly how much have we cut back on that number?
I think when I look this morning, as I'm going through staffing for the upcoming year, we're at either 80 or 98 or 99 full-time. Lori, help me out.
I know there's maintenance at 16.
Yeah, 16 maintenance guys, but I think totally, we might even be lower than that.
But we did add some part-time staff, so I think actually total FTE-wise, we're over where we were.
Right.
So we've added a part-time group.
So I guess that's kind of my point. Even though we felt that we needed the leeway of being able to reduce headcount there because we were locked into it by union contract, we didn't actually reduce the headcount. We felt that we had the need to keep these people on staff. And so it's not that we've cut staff that's prevented us from doing these things. It's just that when you think about your staff and their duties, day-to-day duties, this is above and beyond what we have them hired for on a day-to-day basis.
Correct.
Normally, if you had the extra funds, you would contract to have some of this stuff done. You'd contract that out to outside service where you wouldn't be paying the cost that we pay as employers, but we don't have the money in our budget to contract that out. And so it's not about hiring more people or needing more people, it's about allocating dollars that we just don't have. And I think that's why the legislature was under pressure to create a statute like this. Because if you think back to the referendums that passed, and one that barely passed was raising the revenue limit for, for basic education. But the one that passed more easily was for maintenance and building services. I mean, I talked to opponents of the referendums, but they weren't opposed to that. So I think it's statewide, it's kind of routinely expected that you're going to have every 5 to 7 years, maybe every 10 to 15. I think our referendum last passed, what was that? That was a,
2,000?
was it 2000 when it passed? Or was that the one that failed?
No, 2005 is when we failed.
Okay, so 2000 one passed, so that's,
2001.
yeah. 14 years ago, and we paid that debt off completely so that we're a debt-free district now. But look at all the good we did with that money. A lot of it didn't have a payback. I can guarantee you, there was no payback for the entryway at North. Certainly. A lot of it was maybe not wise expenditures. I know some people are a little bit concerned about the pool. But if you look at some of the payback, was there a payback for the fiber that we laid? Nobody did a payback analysis for us running our own fiber system.
Oh, yeah.
I would say there's a payback on it.
But at the time,
Our technology
we
has
did
been
an
immense, immense.
but at the time, you wouldn't have been able to
No,
lay
it
that
would've
out.
been no, I agree, it would have been hard to
Yeah.
calculate the
Yeah,
payback,
right.
but we,
The
yeah,
benefit's huge, right?
in
But you can't show it in a payback. So when we start talking about making everything based on a payback, now, the other thing I think I could agree with very clearly is that, we don't have to do all this, and we can scale a lot of it back. I think we can cut this back considerably before we actually decide on what our mill levy would be and how we'd levy. But I think this provides the best starting point for what we will scale back at this time. There's no immediate need for us to do the South, all those health and safety things, but it's not something we should put off every year. But it's something that we need to have the discussion, as Mr. Como said. It might not make it this time. There's $2.3 million there of the 11 million we're talking about asking for. I think it's 11.
It was almost 12, 11, 8, I think.
Yeah. So that brings it down around 9 or 8. I think at the study, and I think I've asked this a number of times, when we talk about VFDs and motors, I think 10 horsepower is too low of a cutoff point. I'm wondering, should we be looking at the ones that are most critical, the ones that get used a lot, the ones that pull a lot of air, like the ones over the pools? And I'm kind of surprised we haven't come back with that really scaled down look at, let's just look at the really ones that there'd really be a value added scope to it. When it comes to the lighting, we had a 14.6-year payback for $4.6 million. That didn't mean we wanted to spend $4.6 million. We decided to ask them to kind of not think so much about payback and think about what it is we really would like to do and where, and not just take a shotgun approach. So my perspective is that I don't have a problem with the approval of the facility analysis recommendations, but that's not the end of the story. There's more to it. There's more work for us to do before we approve our budget and levy for next year. It's probably going to take another work session. I think I'm hearing that, because we're almost turning this into a work session. And, but if we could make this the starting point to lean down so that we could go ahead and decide if we want to spend how much money doing what, I think that's a worthy task. And maybe we'll add some things to it, But I think most board members are saying if we can cut the cost or defer the cost to next year's consideration for some things, that's of interest to some board members. And if we can look closely at what really is the critical items, do we need to upgrade all plus 10 horsepower motors, or is there a better choice? I'm still confused over Harvey Phillip. There's $1.5 million for that. I remember every time we talked about spending money on Harvey Phillip, we took that money and said, why would we want to spend that money there, you know? So now we're talking about spending $1.5 million there. So I haven't been part of the discussion, I guess, on this, so I don't want to, Mr. Como?
Can I, oh, I'm sorry, I was just going to give a little history, if that's okay.
Okay.
Where this started was last spring in a discussion about capital projects and so on. And Mr. Edlund said, you know, interest rates are really good, why don't we go borrow 10 million under the cap and do a lot of HVAC projects that have been put on hold or were much needed. Of course, 10 million under the cap made me pretty nervous, because that's a big amount to pay back with some of the tight budget constraints we're under. So that's where we decided, let's look at the energy plan to see what HVAC projects could fit under that. And then we still may have to borrow a few more dollars under the cap, you know, because this one would be outside the cap. Maybe we borrow another couple million under the cap, which wouldn't really be too much of a problem with our current budget. And that way we could get, you know, anywhere from maybe $5 to $8 million worth of HVAC projects that Mr. Edlund noted were well behind schedule. So now it's kind of evolved into a bigger project here, but that's really where that came about, trying to, when Mr. Edlund recommended that, I think the rest of the committee thought, yeah, we should at least look at that possibility because rates are so low. And I was just trying to come up with something that wouldn't have such a big impact on the operating budget, but could still get, you know, a sizable amount of these projects done. So that's
Well-
kind of where it goes back to, and that's now it's evolved into this, but that's where it came from.
But to your point, Mr. Gray, when you talk about doing it under the cap, what you're saying then is going to be less money to go out and contract people to do work that needs to be done, because they're using that money to pay interest.
Well, right, but what I was thinking is, if there's some projects here that don't fit under the energy conservation plan, you know, those could maybe be accomplished, or portions of those could be accomplished through some under the cap borrowing, and then, you know, the bulk of it maybe those projects that do save energy, because my understanding is there has to be a definite energy payback on these to make it fit the borrowing outside the cap. So
But
that's what I was trying to do, is
But
get to
the
that.
point that should be made is, if we take it from under the cap for anything, I don't care
Right,
whether it's a
right.
portion,
Yeah,
what portion, it's going to restrict funds available for getting contracted services that we can't afford today, in
It-
the future,
It-
because
it-
you're using that to
right.
pay.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I hear people complain about services that aren't being done, and at the same time want to encumber the district with a longer-term debt obligation, so we can't afford to do those services, it's kind of like you can't win either way. Either you're going to do it at one time, borrow, so you can do the services now, but you won't be able to contract to do the services to keep the service going forward, or you're not going to do it at all. Or we're going to go this route that the legislature has offered us to clean up things. Last time we had to go to referendum to do it, and people approved it. This time, and I believe that we have to be very judicious about it, we don't necessarily have to go to referendum to do it. We could. That's an option to us. We could do it under our existing revenue constraints, or we could come up with what we believe is fair and reasonable to bond without either of those two items. But that's all up to the board to decide. But from a recommendation, the thing that's on the table for us now is really not to decide all these things. It's just, are we going to approve the facility analysis recommendations relative to the scope that's putting it in front of us, and what caveats would we put on it? Or are we not going to approve it? I guess we don't have to approve it at all. Any more comments? Mr. Como?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I think I'm hearing some of the things echoed before what I was saying. And let me give you a couple examples. for years, we've been saying, let's not put any money into Harvey Phillip, right? That's been reality, Glenn. We continually just push that out. And so last Wednesday really was the first time that our board has seen the idea of putting money into Harvey Phillips. That, to me, is a discussion that should be a planned discussion. The entrance to Waukesha South and having that be more secured. I didn't know there was a security issue, and that it was kind of cumbersome there. Even though I had both my daughters go through South, they actually entered in a completely different part of the building, which raised another question saying, well, shouldn't we be securing, the field house doors and the cafeteria entry doors and, those kinds of east and south entryways. So, I had all these other thoughts that came to mind once I saw that as a point. So there's a number of projects, in my opinion, that I think we need to really do a better, or have the chance to talk about and plan out more. However, there are some things on this list that I can say right now, I think we ought to do. 1B, 9.4 years of payback, the flush meters for, water efficiency. Why wouldn't we hit that one? Why wouldn't we do that now? Go down to the bottom, the electrical systems improvement, the thermography studies that were presented last Wednesday. We didn't know there were risks and energy saving opportunities, but to me, that's a safety and that's a risk issue. And those have payback periods of 2.2 and 2.4 years. I mean, to me, I'd like to say, let's bid those out now. Let's do those now. And I think there are others. The pass-through cooling, the mechanical systems, that's a 9.3-year payback. The electric to forced air heating, that's a 0.3. I mean, it's a small dollar amount for savings, but there's some things on here that, to me, would represent projects that probably would make sense to do in this next year under this type of plan. Again, put our toe in the water or just walk a little bit to see how this works. What I like about the statutes and what I like about the act, and as you were pointing out, Mr. O'Brien, is the legislature figured that there needs to be an alternative way to pay for these things. And what I like about this approach is instead of coming up with a comprehensive list and then going to referendum, is then you follow that comprehensive list, or you try to come as close as you can to it, and you really have to look out a number of years. So I like taking that short-term approach, getting our feet wet a little bit, and then coming back, and we really do need to put our plan together. We need to talk about the issues that you guys believe need to be discussed here. And excuse me, I'm going to use the word, I was surprised even that we would be looking at South's entryway from a safety perspective. I didn't know that was an issue. And we just hadn't had a chance to discuss that. So my suggestion is that we throw this back to administration, have them pare this back to things that we think we should be doing, and we can have that quick payback period time. And then put our noses to the grindstone, and we really do have to come up with a plan moving forward. And Glenn, we're adding some time, and we're gonna, what this means is we're deferring more maintenance costs, another year, okay? Otherwise, the only other thing that I can toss into this for a recommendation is, if there are absolutely things, Glenn, that you believe need to be done, we want to hear those. And maybe this is maybe this is it. But But there needs to be a better argument made for some of these things on the list, at least right now, at least from my opinion. And we've had less than a week to really digest this list. But I think a good portion of it can be digested fairly quickly.
Mr. Adlin?
I'm going to take a little different perspective. I think I probably have a little bit of an inside advantage because of my occupation on knowing what works, knowing what doesn't, what's a real payback, what's going to cost you more money in the long run, working with a lot of different organizations and facilities every day and seeing how they run their businesses and what works and what doesn't. One thing we do really well is we utilize tradespeople in this district. Licensed plumbers, licensed electricians. We had a really good couple of guys in the HVAC area. And those are the people that allow Glenn to work under a shoestring budget. And the reason that is because we're not having to pick up the phone and call out a contractor at $110 an hour every time we have to do a lighting job or an HVAC service call or a plumbing call. Glenn's guys in the skilled trades area are very good at what they do, and a lot of the guys are older and they're retiring out. We picked them up, the majority of them, during the 1980s when we had that bad recession and the trades were really down and guys were out of work for a long time, and we were lucky to pick them up. When we talk about doing projects like this, and I look at the amount of work we want to do and the amount of money we want to spend, I think we're better off hiring people out of the trades and having them in-house because you're going to save more money in the long run. You have more work than you have people. And so I don't necessarily believe that we need to outsource everything to get projects done. Our in-house electrician has been, master electrician has been, oh, you guys have no idea how much that guy saves us money. 2 electricians that we have. In retrofitting lighting projects, that's all they've been doing for years. Years and years. When it comes to, I'll let you jump in, Mr. Como, I know you.
Yeah, we're actually saying the same thing, Steve. When I said plan, and I didn't articulate this, when I said plan, I think the plan should include what is the right size staff we should have here. I don't know what that is. I also know that we can't do everything internally, and we will have to outsource some services. But I don't know what those are. And I think that we need to turn to our administrators to help define that as part of the plan. So I by no means, when I talk about a plan, I by no means make the assumption that we're only outsourcing. So I think we're speaking along the same lines.
Okay. And then, you know, when we're talking about the budget's tight, I look back at just my time on the board, 4 years. In that time period, we've reduced our healthcare costs quite a bit. We went from, what's a family plan now, Lori? About 20,000 a year?
18.
18. We were at 26, 25, 24, somewhere in there? Okay. For a family plan. We now have saved $1 million a year almost on our transportation costs because we've made a decision to go with a different contractor and the fuel costs are substantially less. Decisions like that, I really give the administration a lot of credit for because they're doing their job. That creates a lot of efficiencies in the district. Because of the scheduled timing payments, we've paid off all of our long-term debt. So that's something that didn't have to come out of the budget every year. We've reduced our OPEB liability. That's something that doesn't come out of the budget every year. So when I see all these cost savings adding up millions and millions and millions of dollars, I have to ask myself, why are we discussing we need to spend $1 million on cleaning up all our HVAC units because we haven't hired the people to do the job? And you know, we can talk referendum if we want, but I don't think a referendum's ever going to pass because of Act 10. We have the ability to control our own costs. And if it were not for the word energy being tied in with this presentation, you know, I don't know why we would want to go above revenue limits. Now, that's just my opinion, but when I think back about the 2000 referendum, and you know, we talked about the entryway at North, and we can talk about the South Pool, and we can talk about the press box at South, at the football field. Not one of those projects was included in what was supposed to be the maintenance referendum.
Well, Steve, I'm just going to interrupt you a little bit, because you're kind of getting off topic, because we actually, when we go to the budget for publication, we're going to talk about that portion of it as far as funding this. And this, the topic is really what we do at the facility analysis recommendations, you know, the concrete of the recommendations. I agree that we need to talk about how we're going to fund it, and that's later in the discussion, so that'll be the later topic item. I think we got to get past item 2 so we can get down to that funding issue in item 4, I guess. But, so I guess I'm trying to channel the discussion in that way.
Sure.
Okay, if you don't, yeah. I understand where you're coming from.
I was just dovetailing off your conversation, sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, if this were all about energy savings and the paybacks were simple, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But, you know, the way the statute is written, the statute dovetails a lot of things that are not related to energy. They're related to life safety issues, which, you know, if there's no savings in it, then it's just a loophole to tax people outside of revenue limits. And like I said, with all the money we've saved over the last few years, I'm just not seeing this scenario working out the way it's presented. Sorry.
Are there any comments about, I mean, we're going to get to the budget issues later on, it'll be the same conversation in section 4. Are there any additional comments about the scope? Does anyone have any ideas that they would like to express about something being not what they thought? I mean, we've heard about Harvey Phillips, we've heard about the motors, we've heard about why hasn't this stuff been kept up routinely? Is there any other that people would like to bring up at this point?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious why we kind of, you know, our most energy-intensive facilities per square foot spaces are the pools that we have, but we didn't see anything presented in here about the pools other than the indoor lighting. Is there,
The exhaust is in there.
pardon me?
I think the exhaust is in there, isn't it?
Well, there's one exhaust fan, but that's something that's wore out, and
Yeah, exhaust fan replacement,
yeah,
138-year payback.
that's equipment replacement.
Yeah. No payback on that.
No, it's
I guess the question is if we had like 10 line items instead of, right now we have.
Yeah, I mean, I
20.
think
Yeah.
my
It's
comment
hard
would
to
be
work
the
with.
scope is too big. We
Yeah.
got to pare it down, like Joe was saying, pare it down, bring it back, and then vote on that. Because
Yeah.
this is
Well, I mean, this
very
is-
large.
This is kind of going to my point about, you know, when we got into this, we selected one contractor, and we're going to take that as gospel of this is what we should be doing. And you know, what this is,
Well, I mean-
where I'm trying to get this conversation back to is, who's representing us?
Us. That's right, we're representing us. We should pare it down.
We're not here day to day.
We're not here day to day,
No.
but I mean, I can
We
look-
should be
I can look at
hiring
this list and tell
somebody-
you the stuff that I don't want on it.
We
You
should
want me
be
to go through it?
hiring somebody in this area to be making
We
recommendations
did
to
have a
us.
guy in this area, we got rid of him.
He didn't work for us. He
When the
worked for,
budget cuts, no, we had a guy on staff, there was an energy consultant, we got
no,
rid of
he
him,
didn't
yes.
work for us.
He did work for us.
Okay, guys.
For us, didn't he? And we cut
He
him.
was paid
When?
by the district?
I believe we
Yes.
cut him in my first year on the board.
Yes,
As
he was
one of the
paid by the
cuts.
district.
Yeah, we had a
was
guy.
The guy
district
who worked,
And we
on
kept,
that
and you know what?
energy-
We gotta report about how much money that guy saved us. And then we cut him, and I think he was making, I think, we saved $100,000 on the guy, and he was saving us $300,000 a
yeah.
year.
Well, that's my
That
point.
makes sense, doesn't it?
That's my point.
That we did have a guy, Steve, we had a guy.
Okay.
Okay, so just,
So I think we should pare, my comment is this, Mr. Chairperson. I think we should pare it down, like Joe said, bring it back and vote on it.
So my understanding is there's no one willing to make a motion to approve these recommendations. If there is, then let me know.
As is?
As is. Is there anyone willing to move to approve the recommendations?
No.
So we should, I guess, table this until the next meeting? Or at least,
No, I don't think we should table it till the next meeting. We probably should have another meeting.
Yeah, we should have another work session.
A work session
Another
and
work
get this
session.
done with.
Yep.
While it's fresh in everybody's minds.
I would agree.
so lacking a motion, if there is going I'm not motioning, and I don't see anyone else making a motion for approval. I guess, Mr. Gray, are you comfortable scheduling another work session
Yeah,
on this?
you're gonna need to do that. And I'm hoping that at least tonight we can get some direction. I mean, again, the original program here was to try to get as much HVAC type
sure.
or related work done as possible under debt that, you know, didn't affect the operating budget. So, I mean, to me, that would have to be our number one priority on this, and you can tell me otherwise. And there may be some other areas here that simply make sense to do that need some upgrading, so that we're not in a position of upgrading stuff that was recently done. So I'm hoping that is our direction and our vision for this, so that as administration, we can go down and start looking at things and getting information about each of these projects for you.
Well, I do have one quick additional question that, you know, when we talk about the upgrades, which I support the digital, you know, the pneumatic to digital upgrades. One thing I do question is if we just did North because of what happened at North, is there a reason why we'd go ahead and convert North now or not do it later when it actually would probably need it some years down the line? What's the justification of the conversion at North?
And in our discussion on Wednesday, I think you'll remember I said, since North is back up and running because of the incident we had there, you're correct. There's not an instant need to do North like there is to do South and West.
You see, and those are the types of things that, you know, when you're trying to squeeze the turnip, you know, you wanna say, is it gonna hurt us at North not to do that conversion? Is there a reason why it's kind of like the football fields, we did all three at once? But in this case, I'm not sure that that's the same.
No,
Yeah.
all the leaks that we were able to find when that building was being cleaned and the ceiling tiles were being replaced, all of that has been repaired. And we don't have those same opportunities at West and South. It's just because of the structure of the building and we don't have the manpower. That's not to say that leaks aren't going to continue to pop up, and it will start to diminish. But that's farther down the road. So they are better off than the other two.
When the question was asked by Mr. Edlin, you know, who asked these questions or who protects us? Well, it's us. You know, we're supposed to ask these questions. We're also supposed to hire administration to manage the district and allocate the funds as they best see fit to run the district. And if we're not comfortable with how that's going, then we need to have a sit-down talk with administration as a board. So it's us that's protecting the district as best we can. Mr. Edlin?
Glenn, do we still have the same VAV boxes at North, the original ones, in all the classrooms?
No, we probably have some, Steve, that are still original 1975 vintage, but a lot of them have been replaced over the years. In fact, there were a number of them that were replaced during the, I'll call it the remodel of last August.
Were they put back in as pneumatic boxes?
Yes, they were,
They were, because I know that the mechanical rooms are DDC
yes.
upstairs. And we do have, I think all the mechanical rooms are DDC. So really the only thing that's pneumatic are the VAV boxes and the cabinet heaters above the ceilings, probably.
That would be correct.
Yeah, okay.
Just before I turn it back to Mr. Como, I'm gonna say, there's $6 to $7 million of stuff here that we should just do. I mean, I'm confident, when I look at it and I'm highlighting stuff, if we put off $6 to $7 million of maintenance that we should do, we can argue over how it gets paid for. That's a different subject entirely. To me, that's irresponsible. It's irresponsible not to clean and service the HVAC units. However we go about doing it, we need to do it. It's irresponsible to keep a pneumatic systems, two poorly functioning pneumatic systems going at west and south, even though it's gonna cost us $1 million around about number once we cut out north to do that. It's irresponsible to continue with these, the water heating and chiller upgrades and, you know, all the stuff that we should be really getting on with. So we're the ones, it's us that are responsible if we're doing something that's irresponsible. Now, we can argue over whether it's irresponsible or not, and then we can argue about how we pay for it. But we just can't continue to put this stuff off. It wouldn't be what the community would want us to do. Just key critical maintenance, key critical replacement. That's why this legislation was passed. Because every district in the state was having a problem paying for things, even after Act 10. So. Mr. Como.
Yeah, this study was the responsible thing to do, in my opinion. And I think we hired a company to go out and do that, and I think they did that job, and I think our administrators did exactly what we asked them to do. So just because we're in more of a heated debate doesn't necessarily mean that you guys haven't done your job. You guys have done a good job. You've done a complete job. It's up to us, though, to make the decision as to what we're comfortable in moving forward with and how we're going to move forward with that, if at all. So that's where we come in. So it's good to be able to have a great discussion and agree to disagree. So
I'll let you have the final word, Mr. Edlin.
Well, that's
unless
not
someone
fair.
else insists on the final word.
Then it's not the final word. I will say that there are some things on here that are cost-effective, okay? And from an energy standpoint and payback, I can pick out some of these that when I was doing the thermal energy lab at Saratoga, I was saying, boy, you know, we should have a timer on this hot water recirculating pump, and guess what shows up on this list? And just to explain what that is, you got a pump that sends water to the far end of the building, your domestic water, so that when you turn on a faucet, you've got hot water there, not that you have to run all the water through the line 100 feet long, a 100-foot long line just to get hot water and waste all that water. So you're pumping water all the time. When there's nobody in the building, you don't need to run that pump. You know, simple little common sense things like that are very cost effective. There's things on here. The reason I brought this book tonight was this was a book that was given to us by administration, the third teacher. And I happened to be going through this book, and lo and behold, I came across one here. Reveal How Stuff Works, okay? Number 42. It says, making school infrastructure literally transparent to display the flows of water and waste, teach kids the workings of the real world. Well, that's the perfect description of Saratoga. They leave the ceiling tiles out purposely so you can see what's above the ceiling tile. The mechanical room, that's why the mechanical room was created to be an environment that kids can walk by and be curious about, to expose them to real life. I would like to see, and this is something that I was kind of going with the pools that we have. I'm convinced, after putting in that dinky little 2-panel solar hot water panel system that preheats the domestic hot water at Saratoga, believe it or not, there's a separate gas meter just for that hot water heater. Well, shouldn't say that. It's during the summertime. That's the only time we're using gas, because it also feeds a furnace at the other end. Bottom line is, we can look at that gas bill during the summertime, and I did, and we were spending $550 during the summertime to make hot water for that school. But it's a lot of money to make hot water a month just for that school. Things like that we should pay attention to, but those two dinky little solar hot water panels have cut that down to half. Okay, so there is a payback to that. And where I'm going with this is, with our engineering preparatory academy at Waukesha South, I've mentioned this to Glenn a couple of times, the most efficient use of solar hot water systems is swimming pools because of the high temperature differential. That's where you get your greatest efficiency because you're transferring the most heat. And you know, I'm kind of surprised that with all of the renewable energy little gadgets and experiments that you guys had, you know, that you brought for kids to learn from, there's nothing talked about as far as renewable energy. Now, some renewable energy projects are just nothing but show and feel-good things, but you know, drain back solar hot water systems truly have a payback, and it's less than 10 years. It's a lot of bucks up front. We'd be putting a 40, 50, 60 panel solar hot water system up there. But the payback, we've got the largest competition high school swimming pool in the state. We spend a lot of money on gas on that swimming pool. We don't have everything metered separately over there. But if we did the same thing there that we did at Saratoga, I know that the Engineering Preparatory Academy would get a bigger bang out of their buck for it, because everything would be interactive. So that's just my thought. I'm just saying, what I'm trying to say is, there's things up here that I know that could be done that would add to this list that truly have a payback. But, you know, I understand, you know, for $20,000 and 25 buildings, you're not gonna get a lot for your money. You know, it's topical. The first half of the pages in here that show all the gas and electric bills, Glenn's got the software for that. You know, that came from the last contractor that we did. We knew all that information. You know, this isn't anything new to us. It's not rocket science. We just look at the gas bills and plot it out, and that's what it is. So, you know, there's other things we can do too. And I'm not against energy improvements. They're a great deal. You know, but this thing is so jumbled up with a lot of other things that it just threw up a huge red flag with me. And first thing it's going through my mind is, you know, we're just trying to escape revenue limits for our obligation to maintain things. And that's the last word.
Okay, as long as nobody else has the last word. Are you ready to move on?
Ready.
Yeah. Mr. Gray, pretty clear we're gonna have a work session?
Absolutely.
And
I would have expected that.
we
so.
gave you some more food
Yep.
for thought. You asked
Yep.
for some more direction. We gave you
Yep.
more direction. It's not that we're not willing to spend money.
No,
We just gotta be
no.
wise about it.
Yep, I
And then we're gonna
understand.
do a lot of debate about where we get the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, on my update, I said I'm expecting there'll be another session, so. this
Yeah,
is
that was an
not a
interesting
surprise.
update you gave.
Yeah.
Very, what were you? Tremendous forecaster. Okay, well,
Can I just ask how you'd like to go about scheduling that workshop?
As early as possible.
yeah, let's move this quickly. I mean, we have to deal with, we're gonna talk about the budget later on. We're gonna try to figure out how we're gonna manage this as far as informing the public. I still think we should do kind of something along the lines that we're planning to do in item 4, but that we're gonna have a debate over that separately. But we need to move forward with a work session. I mean, next week would be fine from my perspective.
Yeah, I suggest like always, we have Sue call around, maybe toss out Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday next week kind of thing, and see who's available when, and
We can check Wednesday night too.
So I'm wondering if we could take a survey Wednesday night if we had some.
Yeah.
sure.
But there's no use having a work session and come back with just the same numbers. I mean, do we need to do North High School? Do we need to do 10 horsepower? I mean, at the work session, we mentioned the fan issue, the 10 horsepower motors. I mean, and both work sessions, we talked about maybe we just do stuff related to our biggest issues when it comes to VFDs. So, and the STEM, Harvey Phillips STEM, I've never heard that one before, other than the 2 work sessions. We just never got around to it because we were so busy digging through other stuff. So if we're gonna have a work session, which we are, let's come back with some of these answers for us to consider, okay? Because if we can pare this down a little bit more to where it's something we can wrap our arms around, 10, 15 items, that's easier to discuss with concrete hard savings and recommendations from administration that we really should do this, instead of that, here's some things that we'd like to do.
Right.
Really? What is it we really should do? Now. Then we argue about how we're gonna pay for it. Okay, let's move on to the approval of monthly vouchers. Did you get any phone calls?
No, I did not.
Okay. Does any board members have questions about the vouchers? No?
Nope.
Mr. Como,
I move to approve the vouchers as presented.
do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and, did we lose Lori? Or There she is.
She went to make a phone call
She's
because our
back.
last presenter, we needed to give her a timeline on when
Oh, okay.
to show, so.
Okay. I guess, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Monthly vouchers approved.
Like it.
Okay, now we move on to item number 4, approval of the 2014-2015 budget for publication. Ms. Clifton?
So at this point, I might not make it. There's a set of handouts that I copied in case you didn't have your budget book. The first page is a listing of all of our funds as originally presented in our budget book. At this point, with no recommendations on any changes, maybe that's as far as you need to look. If you wanted additional information, and because I didn't know where the last conversation was going to go, what I did is presented some different scenarios that might include funding. So you can ignore the PMA information on financing. And then there's just different scenarios on what funding might look like. The very last page, the legal sheet, has the revenue cap breakdown. You'd want to focus again on the first 2 columns. Again, that comes directly out of our budget book. It's the information concerning the prior year levy as compared to what's been presented previously within our budget. At this point, we would be asking for a budget to be presented to the public for publication that could be debated at our public hearing. Once we have a budget available for the public to view, then we would set a public hearing date to have that public hearing.
And just to add a little bit as to why these other documents were created regarding the, if we went out for, if we raised the revenue limit without going to, whether we went to referendum or not went to referendum. My perspective on this is I just don't like to drop things on people. I like to put this out there that if we do spend $11 million, this is what it costs. If we didn't do it within, we did it within our own budget, or if we raised the levy to do it, and whether we did a levy over 5, 10, or 15 years. So the idea is, as part of talking about the budget document approval, we want to make sure that it's out there, that there's an additional possible expenditure that might be approved this year that will affect the mill levy. So I didn't know quite how to handle that, so I'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
this
that
would be
way-
kind of the worst-case scenario. So if you had funded everything on that list and you wanted to finance it over 5, 10, or 15 years, here's the impact it would have on the tax levy, so you are aware. And then if you chose to share that as part of our public hearing, we would include it.
We could publish anything we want. It's not set in stone until we vote on it.
That's
It's
correct.
just a budget assumption. by
Right, so
putting
that's
those in there,
what,
correct?
it's what you want to put out to have that conversation
Right,
on at a public
right.
hearing.
Yeah, but my concern is, I think all of us have always wanted to give the public a chance to
Yeah.
know as far in advance. And doing the 5, 10, 15-year amortization on $11.9 million, that's the worst-case scenario. Because we're not going to spend, I'm pretty certain we're not going to spend $11.9 million after the discussion we had. But I would rather put this out there and say, so that people know that we're looking at, this is one of the considerations. It can be 0, it could be 5, 10, or 15. And that's why I asked Lori to look at it and prepare it like that, and that's why PMA put that together for us. Also, it gives the board members a chance to see the difference, the actual concrete difference. If you look at this portion here, the revenue cap breakdown, the mill levy, as presented in the budget, was $9.32, which was a 2.29% increase.
Correct.
That's assuming,
That assumes a 1% reduction in our equalized valuation. If that equalized value was frozen, came in the same this year as last year, that actually, it amounts to about a 10-cent difference, so it would be $9.22 instead of $9.32. So I think this is a pretty conservative,
Right.
worst-case type of scenario.
right. Now, if we go to a 5-year for the 11 million, now if it was half that, let's say 6, these numbers would probably go down by more than half, actually. But let's just assume the ratio's the same. For a 5-year, the mill levy would go up 31 cents over 5 years. So the taxpayers for 5 years, and then we'd be debt-free again, and we'd be done with it. If we go 10 years, it goes up to 9.46, so that's a 14-cent increase, and we do 15, it's only a 9-cent increase, but it's for 15 years.
Then the last page, Joe.
Okay,
So
I got to it. I'm going,
when,
where's?
if we put this document to the public,
Yep.
it seems to me that if we get the chance to hear a lot more feedback from the public about something that we haven't done in a long time, make a decision whether to raise the mill levy or not. And I think when you make a decision like that and you haven't done it for a long, long time, it's a good idea to be open with the public so that they can come and talk about whether they think it's a good idea to spend any money or some money, and how do we pay for it. So that's why I kind of thought maybe we should put this as part of the general open to the public type portion. But your thoughts?
I don't have a problem publishing that. I think that's a great idea.
Mr. Edlin?
Thank you. I think it's a good idea. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Bryan. Todd, have you heard any, let's see, this isn't a budget year, so the state numbers are pretty much fixed, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, I've not heard of any changes, any budget repair bills or anything like that at this point.
All right, thank you.
Any other thoughts on the matter? Yes, Ms.
So
Coleman?
what are we actually publishing for the public to view? Are we publishing just the worst-case scenario, and for which, I mean, I shouldn't say worst-case scenario, but maximum dollar amount. So which one are you proposing to actually present?
I would publish this document.
thing.
The whole thing as is.
And then we need to make sure absolutely clear that our public, via the media, understands that we're under discussion and that we really have 4 scenarios that we're considering here.
4 different ways of paying for it within the budget. 5-year note, 10-year note, or 15-year note.
Yep.
Plus, the public has to understand that we're looking at reducing the overall cost anyway, the scope.
Sure.
You know, this is if we had accepted and decided we were gonna go ahead with the stuff that was put in front of us tonight. We haven't done that. We wanna have another work session, but we do want the public to know that this is the type of stuff.
And what I would recommend to administration as we publish this, that we have a thorough explanation of this, because this is not, I mean, this is a little different from the approach we've taken in the past, and I would like to make it as clear as possible to the public what we are contemplating as we debate this.
And if there's another number you think ought to be on there, so if you know this $12 million is nowhere in your minds as being a number that what we're gonna look, and you would like me to revise that to something different, I certainly can do that. If 15-year financing is nowhere on your horizon to consider, and there's an agreement to that, I can just eliminate that column. But it's at your direction.
Any comments on that question from Ms. Clifton?
15 years seems excessive to me, but
The dollar amount is 11, we know this number's high right now. and
with the 11, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Would 9 million be a better number for her, just coming around, 9 million number if we raise $9 million square? Because then it would look more like a proposal than
Right.
just a
Yeah.
black and white.
Then, yeah, right. No, I understand.
9 million sound good?
Yeah, you can go 9 million.
But we have to, Mr. Como.
I do know I'm not comfortable with the 11.8.
Right.
I'd be okay with 9. My tendency is to not to go out 15 years, but we haven't talked about that yet either. I think 5 or 10 would be more appropriate, and I might even be leaning more towards 5. But many of these have a 10-year payback period, or 8, 9, 10. So I could see going 10 years too, but I'd have to look at that interest amount and really get that nailed down for the if we went coming down to the $9 million mark. But my sense is I could I could get rid of the 15, and I'd be okay with 9 as a max.
So just in terms of execution, Ms. Clifton, were we supposed to vote on this tonight? We have to vote on it tonight?
Well, if you want September to be your publication, your public hearing, then I would need that direction, so I would have time to print.
So what I would suggest, if there's a board member that feels that we should limit it to, we shouldn't have the 15-year column, and we should limit it to $9 million, that we'd approve the publishing of the budget with that 9 million scenario and a 5 and 10 year, 0, 5, and 10, because obviously there's a 0.2. Right? So if someone has a motion like that, then that would be, Mr. Como?
I'd move approval of publishing the 2014-2015 budget as presented with 2 exceptions or 2 changes, to remove the 15-year retirement of the newly proposed debt, and to have the newly proposed debt be 9 million max.
Do I have a second from Ms. Madden? Discussion? Mr. Edlin?
Thank you. I'm not so sure I agree with eliminating the 15-year debt proposal, if that should pass. Just because we don't know what our maintenance needs are going to be if we are going to do other maintenance items under revenue limits. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not so sure that, well, I guess the 2 million is, let me rephrase that. I guess the 2 million would be outside of revenue limits if we were to go with the 5-year, correct? 2.6 million would be above revenue limits?
I'm not.
Not following?
I'm not following your questions.
If we did the
were
5,
using the energy exemption
right,
option, yes,
Yes.
that would stack on top of our operational levy.
okay.
In both of
I
these.
guess it wouldn't have an impact then, because I guess what I'm getting at is if we're going to undertake some other maintenance projects, they're either going to have to go to referendum or we're going to have to do them under the cap.
Correct. And this does
Yeah,
not
this wouldn't affect-
assume
it
that
wouldn't have any-
anything is funded
No.
under the cap. These will all be add-ons.
Okay, and so as presented in the first column, we're assuming that we're not going to do any of the projects,
Or we're going to do it
Oh.
within, or we're going to do them within budget without,
or we're going to do them within budget.
and cut something else to do it.
Or
Some
find efficiencies within the system,
efficiencies and cuts.
like we've been doing for
Yeah,
4 years.
yeah, right. Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up, thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? With no additional comments, I think we'll proceed for a vote.
Ms. Madden?
Aye.
Mr. Como?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Edlin?
Aye.
And Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're pretty clear on all that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Approval of public hearing date. Hopefully this won't take a lot of debate. Ms. Clifton, your proposal for a public hearing date?
We are proposing that it would be before the board meeting in September. That would be September 10th. And you can start 30 minutes, 15 minutes early, however. In the past, I think it's only been 15 minutes, but have it prior to the regular board meeting.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Mr. Como?
I would suggest consideration 30 minutes prior, just because we have a potentially new item, or at least a different way for the public to be viewing this, so I think we should allow for enough time, but
There might be more speakers.
yes,
There
I
is a-
think there has the potential for that to happen.
Right.
So I would be happy to move that we hold the budget hearing on September 10th, 2014. We don't have to name a time, do we, at this time?
I would just have to publish it that way.
Okay,
that
so-
we'd have
well,
time.
then I will propose 6:30 PM.
Do I have a motion on the floor? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. McCaffrey. Any further discussion? Do we need to make that a roll call, or can we do all in favor?
Well, normally we've done all in favor, but we can do whatever way you'd like.
Okay.
You don't
All,
require-
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 5-0. No nays. Okay, approval of sports facility usage agreement. This has been long in the coming, so. Ms.
You haven't
Clifton.
seen this for like weeks, so.
Yeah, that's been a couple weeks.
Mr.,
So-
but, before we start on that, Mr. Como gave strict orders to the F and F chair. Get this done.
Finish it.
Okay.
And with your help, I'm hoping we have. What you have before you is an agreement that I have been notified by Blaine Carlson at Waukesha Express Swim that their organization would accept as the terms as presented. Since the last time you have seen this, oh, I wish I'd have grabbed my highlighted copy. We have spelled out more specific terms under usage in paragraph 1, so that we are committing to a specific block of hours during the winter and fall seasons for swim. That's when there's the most demand for our pools between the schools and the club. So there was some concern on their part that the pools wouldn't be available to provide the classes that they use to raise the revenue that would in turn pay for the rent. So you will see there's more details spelled out in number 1. Number 2 has been modified slightly in that community usage could be at either pool or both. It doesn't necessarily have to be both. In the last version indicated that it would be both. So they've asked for that flexibility. Let's see, I think then this agreement is for 3 years, and then it also has the ability then for 2 one-year extensions. The rates are locked in for 3 years, and year 4 and 5 would be negotiated if the contract is extended out. Under number 13, payment, the sinking fund, initially there was a request for $20,000 due on the first day of the contract. This has been modified to allow that $20,000 to be paid in installments during that first year. It would be due in its entirety, pardon me, by the end of the contract of the first year. So it's still at 20, but it just allows them more flexibility to make those payments. Under B of that same section, rent, rather than being the first day of each quarter, the quarterly payment, it has been moved to the last day of the first quarter, again, to give them more flexibility with the timing of their cash flow. Custodial charges, there's been more clarification on when they would be charged. So if we normally have a custodian scheduled on the weekend to be in that building, there wouldn't be a charge for them specifically, because we already have somebody staffed to be in the building that would unlock the doors for their events or practices. There wouldn't be a separate charge because there's no additional charge to us. So we've spelled that out. And I believe that's the only changes we've made since the last time you saw this agreement, and the directions that you gave me for changes you requested.
Questions from board members? Mr. Edlin?
I think I might have been on vacation last time this went over, but item 7 under improvements. First sentence says the express shall make no alterations, additions, or improvements to the pools. Shouldn't that say school district property?
I guess it's implied, since that's the only area they're renting, is the pools.
Okay, because they, well, the entranceway into the pool area too, they have, quite a bit of extensive work that was used during their fundraising portion of the project. But, okay, if this is,
Well, there's no advantage for them to make improvements because it doesn't go against their rent, so I
Okay.
can't imagine that they would want to.
well, the reason I bring that up, I reference item 20 under signage. We have a policy in this district of not putting names on everything, and just to get the Bob Duckett room, have a little tiny sign outside that room there, was a major hurdle and a big thing with people in the district. This is a district-owned swimming pool owned by the public, not the Express. And what we're saying here is the Express can put permanent signage with their name on a public building, on the public school. And I got a problem with that.
This is a carryover from the last contract.
Right.
So any signs they would have put up during that period of time in that contract, this allows them basically to keep them. So if you want this rather to say it, they're grandfathered. You know,
Yeah, I don't know why this is even in here, because it, it references donor gifts, the expense fundraising campaign, which is expired. That no longer pertains.
Yes, again, it's a carryover from the original contract, so that any signage they had put up at that time, we aren't asking them to remove.
Okay, but it says they shall be allowed at their own expense throughout the term to place permanent signage. So this is giving them further authorization to put more signage up.
Correct, and if you're changing what we allow them to do, then
Struck?
What's that?
You want it struck?
Yeah,
Then strike it. Let's change it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we can talk, I want to just
Yeah,
talk about
right.
it.
Let's get to what,
Yeah.
let's get to where we want it changed.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
But
I-
I want to have a discussion
I just wanted to
around-
get a little background on that,
Yeah.
because I don't feel that it's pertinent, and I think it should be struck. But,
Right.
we're going to have to go back again now to the Express to get all this
Well, no, I
approved from
understand.
them, but I
understand.
just want to bring that up. Under item 12, installation. This one here, I think the terms changed on this, I could be wrong, but the floor that is put in and put out of there, the floor was required by the state in order to give a certain depth to the pool for children.
Bi-ed classes.
Right, and as I understand it, the Express was taking that floor in and putting it out, because if they needed to use the pool for their practices or for their meets or whatever, they'd have to take it out, but then they'd have to put it back in so that we had, educational areas within the pool. But as I read this now, am I reading this correctly in that, that we're gonna be responsible for it?
We always have been responsible. They've taken over those duties for a large part, but they've always been a district responsibility, and it's the district responsibility to certify that they're put in correctly because of our liability.
Liability.
Okay,
So it's ultimately always the district that's responsible.
okay,
But they've always been willing to assist.
all right. So they're getting free labor from us for that. Okay,
We're
No,
getting
we're
free
not doing
labor
it,
from
they're
them.
doing it.
We're getting the
They're-
free
yeah.
labor because originally it was our custodial staff that were putting them in and taking them out.
So
But to be
who's
honest, they're better at it than we are.
Supervise, they do it.
Yeah, we're supposed to
We
have
approve
hands
it.
on, so to
Yeah, we-
mitigate
Okay.
our liability.
all right, because it says they will assist, so I guess they're responsible for and will supervise, that's
We're-
how that's understood.
No, we're responsible for it.
We're responsible.
We're
We are
responsible.
supervising.
We'll always be responsible for it.
Right, okay.
But they have been gracious enough in the past to provide that assistance. And so this indicates that we would still, we still want their assistance with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, those are all the questions I had.
Before, just, any other questions on the contract from any other board members? Mr. Como?
Hey, just real quick, I hope I know the answer to this. Have our attorneys reviewed this?
This actually has been in their hands multiple times, and this is their last version.
Okay, all right.
I have a question. What attorneys? Who looked at it?
Actually, Gary's staff
Okay.
member,
Okay.
not Kevin, sorry, this is Brett Schnepper.
No, that's fine, as long as somebody from Gary's office looked at it.
Yeah.
Best attorney we ever had.
That is the best attorney we've ever had.
Okay, I only have just one quick I think we gotta be careful about wording and what wording means. When people say place permanent signage, what they mean is signage is not temporary.
Right.
Okay? That's, would be my understanding of what they mean. It's not temporary signing, like a quick sign we put up and said, hey, we like this guy, and we're gonna take it down at the end
A
of the day.
banner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's a couple things in here. This is we tried to focus on the financial provisions because that was what I understood this committee has been pretty concerned about. And we basically just drew the line and said that we're not giving an inch on what we've asked for. But part of that was us being more consistent with the way things were done in the past. So making changes to the wording of the contract, unless we really see a significant need for, could be problematic. But back to the permanent signage concept. I think if our attorneys look at that, they would say that the question is the agreement extend beyond the length of the agreement? I think our attorneys would say, no, a permanent sign doesn't mean that the sign's there forever. Okay.
Right.
My suggestion, if we were gonna add a line, would not be to change the paragraph itself, but to add a line defining what permanent signage means. And that all signage is to be removed in the event, removed by express at express cost at our request, if requested by the district, at the end of the contract, when the contract. We could put that clause in there from my perspective, but I'm wondering what other board members feel in terms if they really have a problem with that, or do we just leave it?
My concern about permanent signage would be alteration of district property that we would have to re-alter if they left and costs incurred.
So you would prefer the clause I just
Yeah, I
mentioned?
mean, I get nervous that they're bolting signs to the cinder blocks and they crack them and we're fixing God knows what. Are they bolting something to something or whatnot? That would be my concern about, permanent signage, any sort of, maintenance we would have to do after the signs are removed. I don't care if they put up a sign.
Mr. Edlin?
I think probably to context this is probably in reference to things where they were having like the tiles on the wall by donors. You know, we're not gonna go behind them and if they decide to leave and chisel all those out of the wall. But on the other hand, if they all of a sudden decide, we're gonna have a huge illuminated sign that says, Waukesha Express, that's not exactly that's what I'm referring to. I don't,
Well, the key clause is that it has to have the written consent of the district. So the district does have veto power per the sign. So it's not like they have an open, we have to approve how they mount it, how they secure it, and what they put up there. So we just have to be reasonable about it. Cannot be unreasonably withheld or delayed. Mr. Edlin, or Mr. Como?
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I'm okay with the verbiage as is, and with what has been done. I mean, I think it's been tasteful. I also believe that our administration has done a good job in terms of overseeing that. So I think it's worked in the past. I mean, I haven't seen anything that I don't like. Have you? I mean, I really haven't. I think it's all been tastefully done. And, if sometimes there's that historic value too of remembering the people who initially gave to kick something off, the blocks that we're gonna be doing for, each of the fields in high school. I mean, I think there's some good historical value to some of those more permanent signage things too. So personally, I'm comfortable with where it's at, as long as we really do have the right to, and we do here, to really see what it is first, have that pass muster, if you wish, and I think it's worked fine in the past, so I'm comfortable with it as is.
So Mr. Como, are you prepared to make a motion to accept as is?
I am, and I will do so, if you'd like. I do move to approve the contract as presented.
Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Madden. Further discussion? Mr. Edlin?
I won't be supporting this. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I don't think that the dollar amount is near what it should be. As we saw in our energy study tonight, we're looking at one exhaust fan for the pool is $20-some thousand. That's the beginning. That doesn't begin to touch, you know, the replacement costs of the improvements to the building over the long term. And the energy costs are significantly more. The Express is now up to 1.1 million in annual revenues. Two people in the organization command almost 25% of their income. And I don't think that the last 10 years have been in any way favorable to the system of public education in the school district of Waukesha, financially speaking. $30,000 to rent 3 commercial-sized swimming pools to run your business. North, well, actually, the contract allowed them to have all 3 buildings, all 3 pools, to run learn-to-swim programs that we could be running ourselves in the district. You know my history with this entire situation in building this pool is that we started out with an $800,000 maintenance item that was supposed to be done to the existing pool. We ended up with a $4.28 million very expensive pool that costs us a fortune to run and operate and maintain every year. I don't think that this falls in line with the intention of the system of public education, and has there have been some benefits that the Express rightfully will claim that has been beneficial to the community about it. However, we're not in the business of providing subsidized operations for whether you're a profit or a nonprofit business in the school district. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Mr. Como.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I think given this contract as compared to the last 10 years, I think this is a fair contract. I think that a few things have occurred in this contract that, you know, we can point out. One, first of all, access to the pools are greatly reduced. We've actually completely eliminated one school, North, in having Express have access to that. As we've increased the rental costs, Express has had to come up with a way to figure out how to make it work from a financial perspective, and they can come up with the extra money. I like the fact that we're starting a sinking fund for repair costs. We're kicking that off, and I think that that's a good change in the contract. And I think if you were to look at this community overall, it has a tendency to really support these kinds of activities. You look at the Field of Dreams and it coming true. Well, that's due to the community support. This had a group of community members 10 years ago that spearheaded this, and there was a tremendous amount of support around that. And, you know, I don't know what those the community payback is, as Mr. Edlin had pointed out, that there has been some of that, but I do know we have run some numbers, and local businesses do benefit. I don't know if you've been up there when meets have been going on, but those restaurants and some of those meets are overnights, and there is an economic benefit to a number of small businesses in the area. And I do know that this community vastly supports our students having good activities for choices after school, and I think that this is one of them. And you know, if you take a look at the record of what our schools have done in this area, they've had some fantastic performances, and I think that that's greatly and very much so in part due to the Express program. This level of achievement that we've accomplished in our community has been primarily due to this club and to dedicated coaches. And you know, everyone that I've spoken to really supports this.
Well, I guess if there's no further comments, we could take a vote, but I think I'll just weigh in on just a couple things. Look, there's things I haven't been happy about relative to, you know, the last 10 years. And I think I was, the vote, when we voted to first go ahead with this pool project, I was the only vote against it that night, on the first vote, and the later vote, she voted for it. But, and it ended up being a costly project relative to what it was put in front of us, and it was like, so going back 10 years, we can all say what we can say. Would I like to be able to see more community involvement than what we've had since this pool's been built? Yes, we haven't, I would prefer to see more, but being ultra hard-nosed with the main entry that we had to accomplish that probably won't help that. I do believe that we should do, as Mr. Edlin has suggested, we should try to recover as much cost as we possibly can, within reason, from the entity that has been the driving partner in this. And I commend anyone's efforts for trying to do that. But at the end of the day, you know, if we don't have a contract by October 1st, and this is what we made it very clear to them, they're out. There's enough haggling over this. We've leaned this down as much as we can. It's a 20% increase in the rates, and it's a new sinking fund. All these things they didn't have to pay before, and they're wondering why. We just made it clear. If you don't sign, you're out. So at the end of the day, they had to take and accept a significant change. Not as much as maybe what we would have liked to have had, but they did it. And it's not like we rushed this contract. Unlike another contractor we kind of rushed through, which I was the lone vote against, it's not like we've rushed this contract. We've been working on this for a long, long time. So from my perspective, you know, coming back and trying to, I like the contract as is, going back and trying to tweak it at this date after we've had all this time to work on it and say, hey, you agreed to our financial numbers and we're set, now we're going to go back and start changing contract wording. I certainly wouldn't, I would feel uncomfortable with that. So I will be supporting this tonight, with the caveat that I certainly also support many of the things that Mr. Edlin said. And I think he's worked hard to get us as far as we've gotten, or as far as, I guess that's not proper English, as far as we've come. Mm-hmm. And I think that should be commended. And I think that's the kind of board members you need, people who really, really work hard for something they believe in. Any other comments? Okay, with that, we will proceed with a vote, I guess.
Ms. Madden?
Aye.
Mr. Como?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Edlin?
No.
And Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Information items, the monthly budget report.
Okay, to report on the first month of the fiscal year, the month of July. There is, with the tax collection update, there's one more collection that is occurring in the month of August for the previous fiscal year's levy. And right now, we're at 85% of the collected levy, and we're 84% last year. And the total $11.6 million balance will be settled in August. For July 2014, it's a very slow month from a revenue perspective. We had $39,000 in revenue from local sources, and that's just basically due to the small amount of student fees and investment earnings and rental income. And then there was also in other financing sources, $25,000 for employment service contract cancellation fees. Then just moving down to expenditures, we had in employee benefits, there was a difference in the early retirement insurance expense. It just got shifted last year into the month of August, which would account for the difference in timing for the early retirement benefits. Going to non-capital payments, we had $48,000 in computer software, which was purchased from common school funds for the libraries. We had 4 lease payments retired in our debt retirement. So overall, in the general fund, the district spent $4.87 million, or 3.37% of the budget. in the special education fund, that was all basically payroll-driven. There was no revenues to report for the month.
Okay, any questions? Okay, Mr. Como.
Just wanted to point out one thing under debt retirement. The third payment made towards our Cisco lease, that's our last payment?
Correct.
Okay, and, you know, Mr. McCaffrey, I'm trying to recall the length of some of the equipment there. We're probably gonna get a 5 to 6
Oh, yeah,
year
at least, yep.
timeframe out of that equipment. So we finished paying that off, and we should see a number of good years where we're using that equipment. It's not costing us
Yeah, 2 to 3
anything,
more
so.
years before any major problems or issues that.
Right, and that's really allowed us to go to, this is the equipment that allowed us to go to our IP phone and to really, you know, we need to do something with our 20-something-year-old phone system. So this was part of the infrastructure to help us to really make good technology and effective, cost-effective decisions as to what to put in over time.
Right, and actually, I mean, if you recall the payback on the equipment on some of the servers and whatnot that we also purchased we've already, it's been paid back already.
We like those
The
quick
energy
payback.
savings, that's, I mean, those are quick
yes.
paybacks.
Yep.
Yep. Do you want another paybacks? Because you weren't around. We can discuss it at our next technology committee meeting.
Mr. Edlin.
Any of the stuff that we discussed earlier in our energy proposal, can any of that technology be incorporated into things like the phone system?
Some of it is.
It already is. We have a brand-new phone system.
No.
That was a fairly large item on there, actually. It was the InformaCast.
Informacast, yeah. I was gonna, yeah, ask Steve Schulman about that.
Yeah, he was,
program.
just so you know, he was in,
Oh, was he in?
he was
Okay.
in the session I attended,
Mhm.
and that segment was really, he was a part of
Okay, good.
putting it together.
Okay. So that's going to be part of the technology budget now?
It's something we can discuss. Thank God it's under safety, so we can get it on our,
And all of that work was done by Heartland.
Yeah, right,
Just
yeah,
so you know.
who did a lot of our consulting
They
on-
provided the information so that
yes.
we could include it.
that's our consultants for our technology. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We have more to go?
That's it.
That's it. That meets your report. Okay, that's good. Now, I guess it is, move on to the wellness program?
We are ready for the wellness program. I have with us this evening Melissa Beck, who is our new wellness coordinator, and so she is going to be presenting this evening with the report, the findings of our last year, and all yours.
Well, first of all, Ms. Beck, welcome to being our new wellness coordinator.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Is this your first time before FNF?
Yes, actually it
Okay.
is.
Is it, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Baptism by fire.
Melissa is also our employee benefits person, so
Okay.
she has a dual role.
Oh,
She has agreed to take over those pieces that Jack Bothwell had done for us previously. So she's broadening her scope and sharing with us this evening.
okay. Thank you.
Excellent. You had received the reports in your packet, and I'm not sure if you got a chance to thoroughly look over them, so I just thought I'd give some highlights from those reports. We continue into this year with our wellness program. In the past, we've had the health risk assessment and the biometric screening in the fall, and then the employees also partake in their preventive visits for dental and a physical yearly to actually meet the bulk of our wellness program requirements. In doing so, they do receive a premium discount for their health insurance as well. The majority of them do participate. Last year, we had about 95% of the employees participate in the wellness program to meet the 4 requirements. And for the wellness program coming into this year, those same requirements are going to stand. You know, we are looking at maybe some changes coming down the road that we would address. As far as this year, though, nothing's changing for the employees. We are working on broadening, though, the discount opportunities for the employees as far as gym reimbursements, maybe bringing in nutritional type of courses, stress management courses. And we have formed new partnerships with different vendors already, yoga classes, the walking company for shoes, things like that. So we're really working on expanding what's out there for the employees to take advantage of. We are also looking at some more challenges within the district as well, some to maybe bring the morale for the wellness program into a different level, trying to bring the employees in together to do some challenges against maybe location against location, things like that that we're looking into for this year as well, to have a little healthy competitiveness as well as some wellness initiatives in that area. In the report, you'll just see there are numbers in here as far as absenteeism. We did go up a little bit in a couple of the groups on page 6 for absenteeism this year. The secretaries, it looks like it jumped quite a bit, but I do know I also handle the FMLA for the district, and we did have quite a few secretaries out this past year, and it just, which we normally don't have. Other than that, the absenteeism, it ranged a little higher for teachers, mostly probably maternity, and then the custodians we did have as well went up a little bit. Workers' comp claims, those are also, can be wellness driven. This year, we actually had 0 absences in all of our employee categories. What that does mean is that the workers' comp didn't kick in for income replacement. It doesn't kick in till the 4th day, so there was most likely some missed work, but on the workers' comp, as far as any reimbursement, we had no cases this past year in any of the.
Did that lower our experience rate then? How does the workers' comp work? If a claim is made but not paid, does that still go towards our experience rate on our workman's compensation insurance?
I don't know if you want to jump in.
I'm gonna ask Lori to build.
I'm going to ask Lori, since she's here. It does count towards it, but not as much as obviously the time loss.
So it's a weighted average?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And there's a certain cutoff that we would have to meet, so there's not much effect on that.
Excellent.
And there's a lag on when it will impact our experience rating it. So is it year 4 drops off and
Yeah, it's something like that. It's quite helpful.
Yeah, and then year 4 will drop off, the worst year will drop off, and you have the current 3.
Thank you. Sorry.
On our healthcare claims, we tend to look at the lifestyle-related claims, and we did not have the current year's data. We were working on still the transfer of data with the change of consultants, but our lifestyle-related claims have in the past been much lower than the average of 25%. So I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers for last year. I don't believe that they're going to jump significantly, but we don't have those currently for this year, this past year claims. Currently, last year per participant, the wellness program costs $77.30 per participant. So that was broken down based on the participation, the cost of the biometric screening, and the assessment. Some other highlights of our wellness program is weight loss opportunities out there and through the schools. This past year we had 13 staff members. At Meadowbrook lost 122.8 pounds total. 17 staff members at the service building lost 190.8 pounds total. So those are just some results of the different locations actually doing their own internal wellness challenges. We do the annual Strive to Thrive every year. That's coming up in the spring. We are looking at a new partnership with Pro Health. We're hoping that passes on Thursday with the Waukesha Education Foundation. Very exciting partnership if that does go through. We'll really broaden our event and bring in a lot more participation and a lot more community involvement. So that's very exciting. We're hoping for that. Fitness classes, we continue to partner with the YMCA. They've been a great partner. Again, we're reaching out to other gyms as well, but YMCA has been a great supporter of our program as well. Then there's just some list of some of the wellness-based run the site-based wellness things that they do, the luncheons, they do salad days, just gives you an idea of what the site champions are doing in their locations. These are the individuals that are dedicated per location to help promote the wellness program. And these are some of their things that they do. Lastly, I believe the budget was already out there for the wellness program through the HR. This is built into that wellness budget. And our proposed costs for 14-15 are actually decreasing with the partnership with the on-site clinic and HealthStat. Our biometric screening cost is decreasing. So that takes a decrease of about $20,000 out of our wellness budget at this time. Most of the other, the expenses are remaining the same. I did add in some expenses that we had paid last year that we hadn't, I guess, really separated out, but they were always there, so. I did include just an excerpt from United Healthcare on return on investment, so you can kind of see. I mean, it's generic, but it does come from United Healthcare. See some return on investment for different wellness initiatives. We do the health assessments. We do the glucose screening and the biometric screening. We have the flu shots in the fall. Smoking cessation is not something that we have at this time, something that might be considered down the road. Hand sanitizers, yes. Physical activity, that is something that we try to promote as much as possible. The nutrition, that's something that I think we do need to help people to really, surveys did respond a lot with it, people wanting to know how to cook healthy. And then we do have the 24/7 nurse line and the employee assistance program as well. So many of these factors are already built into our program, whether it's through the health plan or just the wellness program itself. I also included the executive summary from Intera Health from last year's biometric screening. Again, it just highlights where we stand as a population on our health. Participation rate, again, was 95% based on the total eligible. That includes all employees and spouses who are currently enrolled on the health plan. So this is not offered to anyone who's not enrolled on the health plan or retirees at this time. There's two different pages on page 3 and 4 where it outlines our leading areas of risk. Page 3 is the results from the actual health risk assessment. That's an online survey where you answer multiple questions. So when you look at the number 1 area of risk is nutrition habits, which essentially is saying that people maybe aren't eating the healthiest. Skin health is where you're exposing yourself to sun, you're not using sun protection, or maybe skin cancer or some type of cancer runs in your family that falls under the skin health risk. Physical activity is physical activity. People, 61% are not physically active enough. And then personal safety, that comes with helmets, seat belts, things like that. Those are the types of questions they're asking for physical safety. Texting while driving is on there, things like that. And then on the page 4 are the areas of risk that are a result from the biometric screening. And again, number 1, % body fat, body mass index, the cholesterol and total cholesterol. So those are really the areas that you focus on after those screenings that people, make people aware of where they need to pay attention to moving forward. We try to focus on that as well as the risk assessment, the online survey too, where we take those results and see what we can do to bring in those areas to educate and potentially get people involved in their health to lower their risks. And then looking at the summaries. When you look at page 6, you really have the picture of the high-risk factors. What they do is one individual may have more than one high-risk factor. So that's what that's summarizing. We have about 165 individuals that have 5 or more high-risk factors. So those are really the people that you're looking at, that you want to help improve their health and bring in what they need to do that and educate them in those areas. And then they provide the benchmark comparison as well. As you can see, we are benchmark-wise, for our high-risk category, we're lower than the benchmark, same with moderate, and our low-risk category is above the norm. So overall, I don't think we're running too poorly. I think we're a healthy population, but there's always room for improvement. Any questions on that?
If you didn't have a question, Mr. Como, I was going to have 3 or 4. So Mr.
Well,
Como.
you can ask questions, that's
No,
okay.
I'm the
You're the
last.
chairperson.
I'm the last.
I'll always allow the chairperson to go.
I yield the floor to you for 30 seconds for questions.
Oh,
Mr.
no. Can I take it times a couple at least? First of all, thank you for the report. It's very thorough. A few years ago, we committed as a board to the wellness program, and we understand that it takes 3 to 5 years to really kind of get up off the ground and really start to see some of the benefits of that program. Now, the return on investment that you have in here for United Healthcare, that's just general studies, correct?
That's generic at this time, correct?
Okay. Do we have any plans to specifically look at our individual district and calculate that ROI?
I do, yes. Yes, so we just completed the 3rd year, and I think coming forward now into this year, at the end of this year, we'll be able to have an ROI computed where it would give us some results. Coming into this position in the spring, it wasn't possible for me to tackle that piece of it, as well as, really I just wanted to get my hands into it, get a feel for what's going on. But we definitely need to start looking at the return on investment as a whole with the wellness program. Absolutely.
Yeah, there are many reasons why we started this program, but the 2 for me that stick out. One, first of all, we care about our employees. The healthier an employee is, the better they're going to perform, and that should carry forward and benefit our students. And then the second part is that return on investments. And essentially what we're looking at is to reduce our claims. As you have a healthier group of people working, our claims should go down. And so that ROI is going to be a really important indicator as to how well this is working. So look forward to seeing that information. I'm pleased that the overall cost per participant is coming down, and we're looking to expand services. So we're expanding services, costs coming down. Those are some good trends. And I had one question. The program that I forgot, the United Healthcare program that they're looking at, that United Healthcare just started with us for this year. What's the name of the wellness program? We were selected as one district, or
The
maybe.
Activate for Kids.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. How's that going? And was that just for 1 year, or was that for multiple years? Can you remind us of that?
We did re-sign the contract this year for the upcoming year. I did include, and this is the first year of this, I put together a student wellness report. Activate for Kids is in this packet. It should be in your packet as well. There is a report from them as to what they've done this past year. So this funding, Stephanie Sheening is our representative from United Healthcare, and she came in last year, initially had started with 3 schools, but then realized that she should just work with any locations that wanted to bring her in and get her involved. And her goal was to come in and work with the students and promote that at the student, community, family level. So this year, what she is going to continue with that. We are really actually having a different focus on that because there is some new compliance as well with the Health and Hunger Free Act from that Michelle Obama had come through. So it's going to be a completely different year for her and our schools in the wellness of our students and promoting that out to their families as well. But this past year, she had put down what she had done, and she had Every Kid Healthy Weeks. She did nutrition classes that she came in and had taught. I know one of the schools, she brought in a Green Bay Packer Youth Mini Football Camp. That was at Hadfield. There's an activity fair at Lowell that 300 students, a significant amount of students had participated in these. Wellness night at Banting, 225 attendees. 200 plus students participated in a 100-mile club at Banting Elementary. So she was very involved in the schools, but involved in the schools that allowed her to be involved. So our goal this year is to really reach out to the schools and promote them to bring her in at least on one activity. A lot of these activities are in duplicate schools, so we're trying to promote that with the schools to really get her involved more. And that funding is all coming from grants that she gets and United Healthcare. So it's no cost to the district. So it's a great, great opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
30 seconds. Anyone else for 30 seconds?
Go ahead. you're
Now,
on.
we all know Joe measures time differently than the rest
I
of us.
do
That's been
work on
proven.
different time. That was actually 15 seconds in my time.
Time to spare.
You know, I do
I
have a,
yield that to you, too.
yeah, I do have a lot of things, I guess. When we started this program, I was on the board before, and Jack was big on this. I mean, this was something that he really wanted to do, and he made it part of working with the union at the time, pre-Act 10, to get this program started, plus put some incentives for participation.
Right.
And it was also great to see that Jack couldn't even bring himself to retire long enough. He wanted to come back and make sure that the wellness program kept going before he went back into the broader scope. One question I have is when we talk about these overall risk benchmarks and broader statistics like a high-risk number of employees, how do we get that data in the present HIPAA environment? I would think that would be very difficult to get data on employees' risk factors. Are you able to collect broad statistics on employee wellness as long as you don't get the specific information? How does that happen?
Right, so that comes from our claims data from the carrier, and what happens is that goes to our consultant, and then it comes to us just in aggregate. We just get numbers. Yeah, so
Okay.
we don't see who it is, right? You don't get any of that HIPAA information, but we get the aggregate. And that's where the lifestyle claims comes into play as well. That's all from our claims data. Anything from Intera, that's just specific to those bio screens. That data that they're pulling is not as comprehensive as what our claims data may tell us. You know, if we have a high diabetic population, we look at that, and then we want to focus on educating on prevention, diabetic prevention, things like that. So we really look at our claims data for that. The biometric screening really helps the individual on an individual level to know where their risk factors are.
Okay, then the other question I have, because it was a subject of discussion and debate, was when the wellness clinic, the new thing that we're starting in partnership with the county and the city. I guess I haven't heard much on that, but what is the status on that? Is that starting up? in November?
The target is November, yeah.
Okay, so are we doing something wellness-wise and coordinating, trying to somehow blend in our employees into that? Because that was a big part of them. They were gonna help us with wellness and all that. Is there anything going on there?
Yes, so with the biometric screening, that is gonna be done by HealthStat, who's our partner for the clinic. We are not requiring this year for our employees to do a follow-up health coaching, but the HealthStat, our partner, will be doing that reach out to every employee. So every employee that does that biometric screening will get a follow-up phone call. And that is a completely voluntary option on the employee if they wish to talk to someone on the other end of the phone or not. But that's really, that outreach program is gonna kind of start there with the clinic partner. And we're gonna, suggest if something's going on, they would suggest, maybe you need to come in and have a visit with us or your primary. So that's really how we're going to try and integrate that in to the wellness program. They also have some great online tools too. So they actually have a whole wellness portal that a member will be able to access if they visit the clinic at least once. So we're hoping that we can take advantage of that as well.
So have we thought about, from a wellness point of view, looking at, in terms of, it could be students, it could be staff, setting up like bronze, silver, gold. You met the bronze standard, you met the silver standard, you met the gold standard. So that there's more employee engagement. Just because everybody wants to be the gold standard, they don't necessarily want to be the bronze standard. Bronze is good, but it's not as good as silver and it's not as good as gold. Have we thought about trying to do that in some way of making it so there's a status to being healthy within the district?
Well, that's going to be more an outcome-based wellness program, which I know something down the road might have to be looked at, especially with the Cadillac tax. Any wellness program is going to lower the claims, which is going to lower our cost of the plan. And outcome-based, what you're referring to, it's more of an outcome-based plan. You can't just take a person at face value and put them in a silver or bronze or gold. You would need something to back that. There's different ways to do that, different options.
Yeah, I was thinking like a building-wide thing where this whole building, because not so much that they have the outcomes, but that they're so active in the wellness plan. Either they have employees who have health problems or they're trying to fix those problems. Okay?
Yep.
And that you could say, administratively, it doesn't matter how healthy they are, it's how hard they're trying to get healthy. And if that was a way of measuring that to encourage, as a building, that your staff is going to lead wellness initiatives among the staff, have active people who are leading this from a...
And you could do it by location. You have to be careful because you can't
yeah,
share,
data
you
personally.
don't want employees to feel like they're being targeted. So you have to be a little careful on that versus an individual basis, but you could definitely overall tell a location, you're in the bronze category overall.
Which is good.
Which is good, but this is what you get if you get into the gold, and that's where incentives can come into play, absolutely.
Okay. They're just ideas, okay. Well, those are all the questions there's just all the questions I have. I am very interested in it. I think it's a great thing, and I'm pleased that administratively we've kept this program up for long enough where I think we will see results. Obviously, we have a different staff. When 3 years ago, when we had a more senior staff, with all the retirements, we have a younger staff. So that the healthcare needs shift dramatically between those two age groups of people.
Right.
Some for the good, some for not so good, yeah. So,
yeah,
okay.
we still have the retiree population
Right.
to consider as well. So there might be some talk about trying to engage them as well down the road.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I guess the
welcome.
first time wasn't too bad. Nope.
Thank you. Not at all.
Thank you. It's a very nice report. Excellent report.
Thank you.
We don't have anything else tonight, do we? Well,
Evening has just flown by.
yeah. Boy, okay, well, with that, I guess we can adjourn the meeting and let all the people who are here in attendance go home.